Broadcasting the information the mainstream media won't touch. This is The Richie Allen Show in association with DavidIke.com.
And you're very excited about our next guest, and you ought to be excited. He's a remarkable man. He is often referred to as the father of the ancient alien, ancient astronaut theory. He's been researching for over 45 years. He's published over 35 books, critically acclaimed. It all began with Chariots of the Gods. There have been films, countless documentaries, and of course you're all familiar with the Ancient Aliens series of programs, which has been around now for a number of years and has been seen by tens of millions of people around the world. He's going to be in this great city of Manchester very soon. I'm going to post information about where you can buy tickets to go and see him. Let's welcome back to this program Mr. Eric von Daniken. Eric, welcome back. How are you?
Well, it's a pleasure. You see, I'm sitting in my home in Switzerland. The weather is lousy at the moment. It's snowing and cold, but I'm happy and glad to be a member of your show this evening.
Eric, you're a gentleman. You've painted a beautiful picture there. Most of our listeners in Ireland and in the UK, they'll be thinking, I'd love to be in Switzerland right about now at this time of the year. It sounds wonderful. We're going to obviously plug, because I'm really looking forward to seeing you when you come to Manchester very soon. That's going to be an amazing thing. We will talk about that, of course, in the hour. We've got an hour with you, and thanks for giving us an hour. Many of our listeners won't have heard you chat with me 2 years ago, the only time you ever came on. So I'd like you to talk a little bit about your beginnings in researching this subject, because Eric, your beginnings were as far away from the research as is possible, because like me, you had a Catholic, a very strict religious upbringing. Tell us about that.
Yes, in fact, I'm educated in Switzerland as a strict Catholic, and for 6 years I was living in a boarding school led by Jesuits. So we had to learn Old Greek and Latin, and we had to translate parts of the Bible. Of course, as a young Catholic, I was absolutely convinced about God. By the way, I'm still a deep believer in God. But when I was a boy, the God had to have some qualities. For example, God would make no mistake, or God would never use a vehicle in which to move around from point A to point B, because God is all over. Or of course, God never lies, makes no mistake, etc. God is out of time. He does not need to make experience, and then he has to wait what the result will be. So anyhow, that was in my head as a 16-year-old boy. Then we had to translate parts of the Bible. And in the Bible, I learned that the God of the Bible, he uses a vehicle in which to move around. The vehicle comes down on the holy mountain with smoke, fire, trembling, loud noise. There was all smoke around. The Israelites were afraid. They ran away, etc., etc. In the prophet Ezekiel in the Bible, he even describes a flying chariot with the wheels, with the legs, with all details, including the noise which this vehicle makes. So I simply had doubts in my own Catholic education, and I wanted to find out if other communities in antiquity have similar stories. And that was finally the beginning of Chariots of the Gods.
Fantastic stuff. Now, strangely enough, I believe, I did a lot of research again today, even though I know a lot about you, but I believe that you were working at a hotel in Switzerland and you were working as a hotel manager. Was that what you were doing when you began to write the book?
You see, first of all, I made my school. Then from my family side, we came from the hotel business. So I was growing up in hotels and restaurants. So after my high school, I was for a short time a waiter, I was a cook, I was a barkeeper, I was sitting at the reception, learning all these receptionist things. And when I wrote Chariots of the Gods, I was the managing director of a first-class hotel in a little mountain place called Davos in Switzerland.
Lovely place as well. I've been through Davos. What a wonderful place. And that must have been an amazing experience for you to write that. And it came about as you described, because you were beginning to doubt some of or much of what you were taught in your Catholic education. Eric, can I ask you about specific examples? Now, I know you mentioned the fiery chariot, but give us some more examples of things that were in the Bible, maybe in the Quran, maybe in the Torah. Yeah, go ahead.
In the beginning, in the second book of Moses, the Lord speaks to Moses, and he gives to Moses an order, and he says, I will descend on the mountain, but before I descend, you must construct a gate around the mountain so that the Israelites could not come close by, because if they would come close by, they would be destroyed by my descending. So Moses constructs the mountain, and the Israelites are on a safe distance, and then the Lord descends with smoke and fire and loud noise, and the whole mountain was trembling, etc. Now, all this is in the Bible. Or another example, at the end of the Bible, we find the descriptions of the prophet Ezekiel. Now, Ezekiel, by profession, he was a high priest in Jerusalem. And at his time, Jerusalem was captured by the Babylonians. So Ezekiel was one of the slaves working for the Babylonians outside in the desert. And of a sudden, the heavens opened, and all the slaves saw an object coming down, and then they heard the noise. They described the noise and compared the noise with the thundering of a waterfall. And Ezekiel, in the beginning, he believes that must be God, the Almighty God. So he fell down on his knees. Then the noise disappears. It becomes quiet. Ezekiel stands up to give honor to the great Lord. And then he realizes this is not God. And he starts to describe what he sees. In front of his eyes stands a gigantic chariot. Ezekiel describes, he compares with a tent, with a light, a glittering of light. By the way, in the original of the Ezekiel, the word God is never used. The original always used the word the highest, not God. God is a question of the translation. So Ezekiel describes this chariot. He describes the body of the chariot. He describes the wings. He describes the noise which the wings made. He describes the legs. He describes the wheels. He says the wheels can go in every direction, forward and backward, right and left, without turning itself. You see, when you are sitting in your car, and you're sitting on your steering wheel, now you make a curve. Now the wheels in front turn so that you can make a curve. Now Ezekiel describes the wheel. The wheel never moved in right or left direction, but the wheel could move on any side without turning the wheel. By the way, later, one of the leading NASA engineers reconstructed all this, including the wheel of Ezekiel. And this wheel has an international patent, a NASA patent. So all this is very, very fascinating. And by the way, when I am in Manchester, I will show this, and I will show you a very fascinating computer animation. So we have the old explanation of Ezekiel, what is written in the Bible, and then I give you a new explanation and say, now we can choose which makes more sense. My whole speak in England are not just I want to be right, I want to have right. It's just questioning. Look at it from different angles. Maybe you come to another opinion.
It's great, and a good opportunity to mention that Eric will be here through the 4th and the 5th of March. So it's only a couple of months away at the Bowlers Exhibition Centre, Awakening with Eric von Daniken. Saturday, that is, between 8 and 10. Eric is on the Saturday night between 8 and 10. We're going to put details on Twitter and on Facebook for where people can get a ticket. I'll be there, Eric. I'm looking forward to saying hello to you finally. Now, biblical scholars, in inverted commas, right, they've looked at what you've written and they've said, right, okay, but it's still God. It's still God. Why are they wrong? Why could it not be God? Even if it was some wonderful, mechanical construction, futuristic technology, why could it not be God?
Because God, at least in my personal opinion, does not need a vehicle which has wheels and wings and legs and all these things, a vehicle which makes noise, etc. My God, and I'm still a deep believer in God, is omnipotent. He's at every time, to every place. He does not need a wheel. Of course, in my Catholic educations, I was talking to my professors about my doubts. And they said, Eric, Ezekiel in the Bible, he simply had a vision. He had the vision. He saw the Almighty God on his chariot, on his flying throne. But I had a different opinion. So finally, we have two opinions. And I think my opinion is another one, but it doesn't have to be necessarily the one, which is the only explanation for Ezekiel. But at least God, in my opinion, would not need a vehicle in which to move around.
And there's no answer to that, is there?
There's no answer to that.
There's no comeback.
Possibilities of explanation.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And there are many, in your books over the years and in the TV series, you show, and I'm sure you can share some more examples with us, where thousands of years ago, people encountered flying type machines and described, didn't they? Yeah.
Look, there are so many. Now, you see, in the Bible, for example, there is shortly in the Old Testament, in the beginning, shortly there is mentioned the man with the name of Enoch. And in the Bible, you only read that Enoch was a prophet before the great flood, and Enoch was the first human who disappeared in a fiery chariot. Then, nearly 200 years ago, an Englishman was in Ethiopia for quite some 20 years, and he learned the local language, and he was in a convent in Ethiopia, and there in the old library he found a book called the Book of Enoch. Now this British man knew the name of Enoch from the Bible, but he didn't know that there is a book. And the Book of Enoch was written in the first person, so in the I version. I did, I saw, I was there. So this Book of Enoch was translated nearly 200 years ago from Ethiopia into English, later from English into German, etc. And the prophet Enoch clearly says he was 12 years old when something descended from the sky, again with loud noise. The whole community of the village were afraid and ran away. But the 12-year-old Enoch was standing there. And then two people came close to him. At least they looked like people, but they had glittering suits on. And they had helmets. And they didn't breathe like the humans breathe. And they were talking in Enoch's language, which is no problem, by the way, to learn the language of a community. Our ethnologists did that all the time in a few months. So these two strangers say to Enoch, to the boy, if you wish, we will take you up over the sky, over the earth, and we will show you your planet from above. And the 12-year-old one says, yes, I wish to do so. So these three people, two strangers and Enoch, they make a few steps away. And one of the strangers says to Enoch, human, you smell terribly. You stink. So the human had to push himself into the water. Then he comes out of the water. They give him a cream. He should put this cream over his whole body. And later they give him some sort of suit, the same suit which they were on. And he was looking glittering like the others. Then they go up. Of course, Enoch has no technological words. He cannot explain what it was. He has no word like space shuttle or mother spaceship. He simply explains, when I was up there, I wish to fall down to the earth. So if someone wishes to fall down to the earth, he cannot be on earth.
No.
And then he said, the high place on which we stood always turned up and turned down. Of a sudden, I saw our earth, the planet Earth, up, and I saw the stars down. Now soon as you are in a mother spaceship, which surrounds the earth in an orbit, this mothership itself would turn around its own axis. By turning around its own axis, you create an artificial gravity by the centrifugal force. So it's a must to turn a spaceship around its own axis. But in Stone Age time, and Enoch was talking before the Great Flood, in Stone Age time, nobody could have known this. And Ezekiel says, I wish to fall down to the planet Earth. The holy place, the high place on which we stood, always turned up and down. Then I saw the earth up there. I saw the stars down. Later, they educate him. He learns their language. They teach him in astronomy. One of the astronomers says to Ezekiel, to Enoch, human, look out of the little window. You see this little light there? You humans call it moon. But the moon has no light by itself. The moon receives his light from the sun. And then he explains him the different phases of the moon. Why is the moon sometimes full and half and disappears, etc. Now, all these things are scientific information. It's not just a wish or a dream. The informations are too precise. Of course, I know that some thousands of years ago, our ancestors had natural religions. They were afraid about the storm, about the earthquake, about the thundering. They could not understand what natural catastrophes were. So in the beginning, we in fact had natural religions. But nature, the thundering, the earthquake, does not need scientific information. And in the book of Enoch and in several other books around the world, we have received scientific information. For example, about the calendar and so on. So this is the difference between natural religions and the extraterrestrials, which were here some unknown thousands of years ago.
Eric von Daniken is on the line. It's exactly 14 and a half minutes to the top of the hour. Now, a listener just tweeted, Eric, a lovely tweet. Eric's interpretation of Ezekiel so impacted me as a child that my son's middle name is Ezekiel. In tribute to you. That's a nice thing. Now, JP listens in Manchester. He's a big student of your work, and he wants to know the tablets given to Moses by God. We think they're the 10 Commandments, but were they maybe DNA discs? Were they something entirely different?
Well, I don't know in what form the tablets with the 10 Commandments existed. But your question of DNA, that's something different. Of course, we are humans. We have a human evolution. We know, roughly, that we belong to the family of apes. But that's not enough. You see, on our planet Earth, we have, for example, trees like an apple tree. Now, our ancestors have changed the apple tree by, what is the word in German? It's propping. You know, you mix an apple tree with another apple tree.
Splicing,
and this is making a changement in the genetics. So in the past, extraterrestrials made changements in our evolution. We still came from the family tree of the apes, but among the evolution, something has coming from outside. So we have a change in our genes. We are not only humans by evolution, something extraterrestrial is in us. And by the way, that's again what the old holy text says. They all say, not only the Bible, that the gods created humans according to their own image. So in a way or another, we are similar to the others. You know, I'm always criticized and they ask me, Eric, this is so ridiculous to believe that extraterrestrials should look similar to us. Extraterrestrials would look completely different. They have another evolution. Or even more, it is ridiculous to say that extraterrestrials would think or feel in a similar way than we do. And the critics are right. The extraterrestrials do not look by coincidence similar to us, but we look like them. And we think like them because we are the product of it, which is not the same.
Eric, can I just...
God created humans according to their own image.
Can I just jump in there?
I even believe that 2 days, sometimes we are observed. Someone is observing us. Also, I myself never had an experience. I never saw a UFO. But somebody is observing us, and these beings who observe us, they know exactly how our brain functions, how we think, because we are part of them, or they are part of us.
Now, and I want to talk more about that, and the time is just flying by. This is so brilliant. I want to ask you to speculate as to, I mean, these interdimensional or extraterrestrial beings, far, far more advanced and superior to us, why did they arrive, Eric? What do you think was the purpose? Where, I don't mean to be flippant, I don't mean to be jokey, but were they tourists? Were they here to observe what maybe they were like millions of years ago? Why were they here?
There are different possibilities. We will have no time to explain them all, but according to my researchers, I think or I believe that they simply were here because they want to spread out intelligence. You see, the universe is gigantic. The universe is endless. And if you have just one or two intelligent forms of life at some point in our universe, and you want to change information, you need more than one or two intelligence. You need thousands of it spread out in time and space. And that was the reason they came here. They also went to other solar systems. They created new intelligent forms of life because they knew that evolution would go on, and every intelligent form of life has curiosity. Without curiosity, there is no intelligence. Curiosity means always asking questions. Curiosity means make inventions, including inventions in technology. So they knew in advance it would take maybe 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years. Then these humans would create again spaceships. And they continue what we started. We will go out there and spread out intelligence to a next solar system. So I think this is one of the possibilities why they did it. But there are 5 other possibilities.
There are so many. I mean, yeah. I'm going to be the devil's advocate just for a minute. I mean, I love your work. I love the books. I love the TV series. But wouldn't you imagine, Eric, that among the aliens themselves, there might have been a big debate about the rights and the wrongs of interfering in the Earth ecosystem? I mean, some of them might have been saying, well, why should we interfere? Let this planet and these creatures evolve naturally. I would imagine if they're just as intelligent or so advanced, maybe, you know, it could be argued that maybe they wouldn't have wanted to interfere with us. What do you think?
They had difficulties. They had discussions among themselves. I just explain why. You see, in my Catholic education, they told me when I was a boy, Eric, when you are living in a correct way, you are not cheating somebody, you are not killing somebody, you are honest to each one. Finally, when you die, you will go to heaven. And heaven is the place of absolute happiness, because in heaven you are united with the Almighty God. So I was taught this. But later I learned that there was a war in heaven, a fight. There was an archangel, his name was Lucifer, and Lucifer with his disciples went to the throne of the Almighty God and said, we do not serve you anymore. And then the Almighty God asked for the archangel Michael to destroy put out of heaven Lucifer. So here we have a contradiction. If heaven would be the place of absolute happiness because you are united with God, then an opposition or a fight against God is impossible. When you are happy, you are not fighting. You make no opposition. But we have in mythology this fight in heaven. And practically every old mythology, it doesn't matter where. For example, in Old Greek, you see we have the gods who descend. We have the god Apollo, his father Zeus. But before Zeus arrives in our solar system, he has to have a fight in heaven against Kronos. So there was a fight in heaven. Heaven, you simply have to translate by space. Then it makes sense. Angels, you have to translate by extraterrestrials. Then it makes sense, etc. So according your question, you said, were they not? Why did they do this? Should they not have just left us alone? They among them had the same discussion. Some part of it were in favor of humans. We should help them. We should make them intelligent. Another group of the extraterrestrials were against it, and they had fights in heaven.
This is great stuff, Eric. I want to mention again, I'm going to mention several times, Eric's website is Daniken.com. I've tweeted that out there. Check it out. And just to mention again, and we've already tweeted out details of where you can get tickets. Eric is in this great city, Manchester, in only 2 months' time. How exciting is that? He's at the Boulders Exhibition Centre, Boulders Exhibition Centre on Saturday, the 5th of March, 8 o'clock to 10. Unsolved Mysteries of the Past, the Von Daniken Legacy. It's a lecture you don't want to miss. As I've said, we've tweeted out information as to where you can get a ticket. This is absolutely great stuff. Eric, We're going to take a break in a minute. Before we do, though, the God that you believe in, you believe that there is a creator. Yes. And forgive me if my questions sound stupid. They're not meant to sound stupid. Do you think this God is also the God of these incredibly intelligent and extra dimensional beings? Does this God created everything, right?
Definitely, yes. You say, I said some thousands of years ago we were visited by beings from outer space. So if you accept this, you have to ask, where did these visitors come from? What is their evolution? Now you can say, well, they were influenced or infected by another intelligent form of life. Okay, what's their evolution? You can get back the game for billions of years. Finally, you land to an ending point where in every respect with religion, you become very modest and you say, here is God. Here is what we call God. Here is creation. So when you deal with extraterrestrials, I personally never lost my God. I am still one of these humans who pray every evening.
Eric, we're going to take a very quick break. It's only going to be 2 minutes, but if you want, it gives you a chance to grab a cup of coffee or grab a glass of water. And when we come back, we're going to go till past the hour, which is brilliant. We've got you for another 35 minutes or thereabouts. This is flying by. Loads of great questions from listeners. Many of them have been reading your books for many years. It's a pleasure to have you on. So we'll just take a quick pause. So Eric, you grab yourself a cup of tea there, or a cup of coffee, and we'll take that quick break. The great Eric von Daniken, the father of the ancient astronaut theory, the author of over 35 best-selling books, films, TV series, is on the line. He's in Manchester, as I pointed out already, in early March. And again, all the details for that have been tweeted by Claire, my producer. So it's time for a quick break. When we come back, you've been sending us terrific questions. Thank God for that. And I mean that, because as much as I love this, many of you are far more familiar with these theories and these books and Eric's work than I am. So back in a minute.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever.
Do not risk putting another pound in your bank account until you've heard this message. It's Jim Rickards here, best-selling author of Currency Wars and The Death of Money. But today I'm urging you to claim a free copy of my brand new book, The Road to Ruin. Visit theroadtoruin.co.uk for full details now. Inside, I uncover the financial elite's secret ICE 9 plan to take full control of your hard-earned cash. To see how, visit theroadtoruin.co.uk right away. It's not too late to prepare. Claim your free copy at theroadtoruin.co.uk today.
Right, welcome back. It's exactly 90 seconds to the top of the hour, Thursday, January 5th, 2016. Our guest today is Eric von Daniken. I'm going to mention again, Eric is here at the Awakening, the largest UFO and conscious life expo in Manchester, which takes place on the 4th and the 5th of March. Eric is on stage on Saturday between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock. It's the Bowlers Exhibition Centre. We've already put details out there for those of you who want tickets. Now, be under no illusion. Whatever tickets remain for this event, they won't be around for very long. If you want to see Eric, get on top of it now. Eric's website is daniken.com. Check him out there. And we've got him for another 30 minutes, 35 minutes maximum today. Eric, thanks for staying around. It's an absolute joy to have you back on the programme. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure for me and a joy to talk to you.
You know what's incredible about you? You've been at this for 45 years. You're 81. I'm not going to patronise you, but we know that 81 is not old. Not anymore, it isn't. No, it isn't. I mean, you might say, Jesus, Richie, I feel old sometimes. But your enthusiasm for this, Eric. I mean, I've been listening to you doing interviews on the radio now for a number of years, and your enthusiasm and your boundless joy and optimism in talking about this stuff is wonderful. It really is. Congratulations.
You see, I sometimes have the impression the gods love me.
Well, they must do, yeah. They absolutely
yes,
must.
Yes, you're
do.
right. I'm 81. Well, in a few months I will be 82. But I live in Switzerland in a good air, in a good health, and I feel perfectly. My body and my brain are still functioning. I'm happy and grateful for it.
Well, we're delighted that you're healthy, and we're looking forward to seeing you here in Manchester. Now, Les tweets, extraterrestrials bred us to work for them as we bred dogs and horses to work for us. That's Les. There's been a couple of questions, Eric, about giant skeletons and the new world, the new and the old finds, ancient people, the giants in Antarctica, huge structures going back billions of years. I suppose information is coming out all the time. How do you deal with the fact that so much info is still coming out year on year on year?
Well, the world changes, and our scientific community and our archaeological community, they are finding and detecting always more stuff because of our technology. You see, until some years ago, we believed that the Great Pyramid in Egypt is one of the oldest monuments. We said it's about 4,500 years old from now on. Then later, they found an archaeological place in Turkey called Göbekli Tepe. This is about 12,000 years old, which means roughly 8,000 years older than the Great Pyramid. A few weeks ago, I was in Java, in Indonesia, and I visited a temple in the jungle, which is 23,000 years ago. So it's always older and older. We have to date back the beginning of our civilization for more and more and more years. Even in your wonderful country, I mean, you have places like Stonehenge. But Stonehenge, in the beginning, we believed the first phase of construction was about 2,800 BC. In the meantime, they found around Stonehenge older stones. Stonehenge becomes bigger and bigger. The dating goes back and back. So we learn more practically every month. The same thing happens for old writings. In some libraries in Ethiopia or somewhere there are old books in India which nobody translated. They were there in cellars for thousands of years. And now slowly, because of our computer knowledge, we start to translate some of these old books. And it's all fascinating. So the information never stops. It's a never-ending story. And finally, we will learn, yes, we are earthlings. We grew up on this planet by evolution, but not only, because some thousands of years ago, extraterrestrials were here, and they influenced our humans, and this entered into our mythologies, into our legends, including in some of our old religion. That's what we have to learn.
Eric, I want to just mention again, not to be negative, but just in the interests of fairness, because some of our listeners undoubtedly will be not as enthusiastic as me, and they'll be a bit sceptical. You're well able to deal with the skeptics. Your critics have said over the years, they've said, Eric, you're lazy when you say that these great structures like the Easter Island statues and the pyramids, that they couldn't have been made by man, that they couldn't have been constructed by us. And you were actually accused, bizarrely, weren't you, once, as racist. They said that basically you've been kind of belittling the abilities and the ingenuity of the human species. Now, I have sympathy and I agree with your theories. I don't believe we could have made these things back then. Why are they... No.
Listen, there's a big misunderstanding.
Yeah.
It was the humans who made these buildings.
They built
it was
them.
not extraterrestrials. The humans created the Great Pyramid. The question is just first, why? For what reason have the humans made this? The normal answer is, well, they did it for the gods. Okay, which gods? The gods in nature? No, because these gods were talking. Scientific information was giving come. It was the humans who did it. Now, for example, the Great Pyramid. As we know, in the meantime, there are much more little shafts and rooms in the pyramid than we ever knew some 10 years before. In the meantime, we have found in the Great Pyramid different shafts and rooms. That means planning by engineering. This planning had to be done before you start with the construction. So to move stones around, this is quite possible for humans. There are different possibilities how they did it, with what tools, what instruments, what ropes and so on. The question is, why have they done it, and where did the planning come from? Because the planning does not fit in the time of Cheops. You see, Cheops' father, Snorfu, and his grandfather, they simply came out of Stone Age. Now, every technology has a certain evolution. You start slowly. Our ancestors first, they found out how an arrow and a bow functions. They realized that some stones are hard, other stones are soft. They understood how you could chisel the soft stones. They learned how to move stones, etc., etc. It's all an evolution of technology. It's just not there. Now, the evolution of technology for the planning of the Great Pyramid did not exist at that time. There was engineers behind it. And I think these engineers were the extraterrestrials, but the humans did the dirty work. We did moving the stones around, but the others made the planning. The question is then, why, for goodness, should they do this? What's the important? Inside the Great Pyramid, according to Arabian writings and all Arabian writings, inside the Great Pyramid should be all the books of knowledge of that time. The books which were dictated to some of the humans, like Enoch, long before the Great Flood. And some Arabian writings said the Great Pyramid was not constructed by Cheops, the pharaoh of the 4th dynasty.
Yes.
The Great Pyramid was constructed by Enoch and his son Methuselah before the Great Flood. So if this is true, then somebody had to make the planning. The humans did the dirty work. So that's the open question for me. But the misunderstanding is, like you said, some sort of racism, that we were stupid. No, we were never stupid. We were the artists. We had the knowledge. We were the artisans. We made all these wonderful paintings. We did it. But why have we done it? And with the help of what and whom? That's the question.
Can't wait to see you in Manchester. Got to say that again. We've just put out the details again for Eric's talk here in the city.
In Manchester, of course, I will show you incredible pictures. I will show you pictures and computers animations which are baffling. You say, oh, hey, my God, that's another way to look at these ancient things, and it makes sense. But by the end, you have to decide what you think is reasonable or less reasonable.
Absolutely right. Now, I'm going to mention this briefly, and then I'd like to put a few questions from the audience to you, and you can take as long or as little as you need to answer the questions. But before that, we talk a lot on this program about the simulation theory, that we live in a holographic universe. Now, that is not completely incompatible with the idea that there is a creator of everything. What do you think about that theory, Eric, that we are living in a holographic universe which only exists because we basically download it, because we observe it? How do you feel about that?
Exactly. This is part of the quantum theory. It's absolutely fascinating. But I have difficulties to believe in this. I mean, I feel as a human. I have a human sex. I have human ears. I have human senses. I don't feel like just being in a holographic universe, but you can never exclude it. What do we know what our scientists will find out in 20 years? But for me, the extraterrestrials in the past are reality, and we humans are reality.
No, fair enough. I brought it up because we talk a lot about it. I've a lot of sympathy with it. I had Rich Therichieallenshow on the programme from NASA a few weeks back. He still works for NASA. He discovered moons on Saturn, and he's changed his whole philosophy. He's looking at this and basically believes that it's a simulation. Anyway, thought I'd throw that in there. We've got some fantastic questions coming in, Eric, from our listeners. Just to do a quick recap, 9.5 minutes past the hour, the great author and researcher and scientist Eric von Daniken is on the line to us from his home in Switzerland. Let's get to these questions. So many tweets. Go to Richie Allen Show on Twitter. You'll see what other people are tweeting about there. Patrick Garrett tweets. How you doing, Patrick? Richie, please ask Eric what he thinks about time travel, about the fact that time isn't linear. This is fascinating. What do you think, Eric?
Well, definitely time travel will exist in the far future. I mean, Albert Einstein has proved already that soon as you are in a spaceship which flies very, very high speed, coming close to the speed of light, the time definitely is different for the astronauts on board of the spaceship compared with the humans on Earth. This is a proven scientific fact. So we have different times. I mean, the quantum theory, which is very, very complicated, which normal, ordinary people like me don't understand. In the quantum theory, time differences, time travel, and different universes, which just exist next to our universe, they do exist. But to my knowledge, we have never proven it. It's just mathematically they do exist, but we have no, practical proof of it.
Now, on that, Alan tweets, first of all, Alan says he's going to see you in Manchester and can't wait. He says, what about, over the years, Eric, have you considered, again, that we're in a prison of some sorts, and that while the visitors may have appeared over the millennia to have been benevolent beings looking out for our best interests, that while they appeared like that ultimately they weren't like that they came here to enslave us and to imprison our minds. That's from Alan. That's an email from Alan.
Well, I myself, I don't feel as a prisoner. I feel very free. But of course, my knowledge is very small compared to the knowledge of extraterrestrials or compared to the knowledge of a far future. And we always have to go step by step. Our knowledge, our brain will open, and we see more possibilities than we know today. Now, I don't know if you are familiar with the so-called zoo hypothesis. According to the zoo hypothesis, you have to regard to our planet like a zoologic garden with all the plants and the trees and the animals, etc. Now, every zoological garden has some guardians and has some visitors. The guardians and the visitors, they have to keep certain rules. For example, you do not steal expensive plants, you do not feed crocodiles with living dogs, etc. So the watchers, the guardians, and the visitors have some rules to observe. Now, the watchers observe that we are growing, and they realize sooner or later we have evolved in technology that we can make space travel, primitive space travel. By rocket propulsion, we go to the moon, and we send some space probe to Mars. Now the watchers ask themselves, should we permit to these humans, to this race on this planet, to leave their planet? And they would decide probably, yes, we will permit them, but only when they understand that they are not alone in the universe. Soon as we understand that we are not alone, that we are just part of a gigantic cosmic family, then they permit us to leave our planet. Without this knowledge, we still live like in a prison sometime of religion, prison sometime of thinking, and soon as we understand the universe is endless and there are thousands, billions forms of life, then we will leave the planet, and then we will have officially contact with extraterrestrials. But these are just some of my thoughts.
It's great, Eric. I want to ask you about one of the things that gets asked to our guests when they talk about these subjects on this program is how much of this is known by the ruling elites on planet Earth. This is a great question. I know you've been asked this a million times, and is there any possibility that there is contact, now, that while you and I talk, there are people who know how to be in contact with these thousands and thousands of other species of life around the universe? A great question, that. What do you think?
Well, I had the chance, and I still have, to come together with brilliant people, be it on politics, or be it in astronauts, or be it in scientists. And some of these brilliant men, they told me they know that there are extraterrestrials. For example, Ed Mitchell. Ed Mitchell, it was an American astronaut. He was the 6th man on the moon. I knew him personally very well. And he told me, Eric, I was officially informed that extraterrestrials do exist. And I said to Ed, what have you ever seen? I mean, you were an astronaut, you were on the moon. Have you ever seen UFO? He said, no, I never saw a UFO. So I said, how can you say that officially you were informed? And he said, every time before we leave, and the same happens with other astronauts, including the Russian astronauts, every time before we leave, we receive a briefing. And some of the scientists tells us, astronauts, listen, you will probably see during your flight some things out there which you could not believe before that they do exist. Now you are not allowed to speak in your radio, you know, with the Earth, that you have seen UFOs or extraterrestrials. Never use these words. There are always other words which are used in the contact with our planet. So, and there are other people who really, Professor Dr. Carl Sagan. Sagan was a Harvard professor, a brilliant man. He has come out some 20 years ago with a book with the title Abductions. And he was all in the beginning against this UFO stuff. He was against abductions. He said, this is all ridiculous and stupid. I knew him very well. We had many discussions among us between four eyes. And he said, Eric, we are just one of the species of thousands of species which exist around us. We have just separated ourselves. Sooner or later, we will make contact with them again. It's all a question of slowly developing, because if we, from one day to the other, our scientific community or our politics would go on television and say, hey, we have contact with extraterrestrials, they are here, they are observing us, humanity would be shocked, completely shocked, because the scientists, which are the serious people, told us extraterrestrials do not exist. And if they exist, we will never come together because the distances between the stars are much too big. And even they would never look like we, etc., etc. And now they are here. So what the scientific community told us was only partly true, and a big part of it is wrong. So we are shocked. The same thing happened with religion. I mean, every believer in a religion believes that his religion is true. And every priest is a honest man, and he's completely convinced that his explanation of God or of Jesus or whatever is true. And now from one minute of the other, he hears from extraterrestrials that some part of his belief is wrong. That's a shock. We have to learn slowly, step by step, that we are not alone. And don't create the human shock.
Hey, Eric, it's interesting that you mentioned step by step. You are in Switzerland tonight. I'm in Manchester. And I guarantee you, it's Thursday night. If we took the remote control and went into the TV lounge and switched the TV on, there will be a science fiction drama on one channel. I guarantee it. Somewhere there will be a big budget science fiction drama. So are we being prepared with all of this? Because every second or every third television show that gets made today, doesn't it, Eric? It has a theme about aliens visiting Earth. I wonder, are we being groomed or prepared for the eventuality?
In my eyes, definitely yes. You see, some 3.5 years ago, the American History Channel, the TV channel, came to me and they asked me if I would be part of a series called Ancient Aliens. And the idea was, I was just an interview partner, nothing more, and just giving ideas. And they had the idea to produce 3 continuations of this TV series. Now, they were extremely successful. In the meantime, 3.5 years have passed, and we have, until today, produced 150 continuations. just because the people want to see this worldwide. It's like some 20 years ago, the X-Files. Now we have Ancient Aliens, 150 continuations, and this goes on. It's a never-ending story. More and more scientists are joining the family and saying, hey, there is something which we did not tell to the public before, but in the meantime, the time has become ripe.
Eric, we've only got 10 minutes left, and thanks for coming on. The questions are flying in. I've had a brilliant question from Kelly. This is an email. Kelly says, Eric, you've been doing this for over 45 years. If there is one artifact that you've seen on planet Earth, one statue, one artifact that could convince anybody that it was made or came from or depicts life on other planets, what is it? That's a brilliant question. What's the one thing, Eric? Yeah, the one thing.
You see, until today, we have no artifact which definitely comes from outer space. I have never found an extraterrestrial artifact on this planet. I would be proud to present an object or an artifact to the scientific community and clearly proven this is not from our planet Earth. We have nothing like this. But what we do have, you see, our ancestors, they were in contact with these ETs, and some of the ancestors made paintings of them and chiseling of them. And one of the chiselings is found in Mexico. There is a place called Palenque. Palenque belongs to the Maya culture. Palenque has one of the pyramids called the Temple of Inscription. And deep under the Temple of Inscription, in 1952, Professor Dr. Rus, he was an archaeologist, he discovered a secret tomb. The tomb was covered with a stone plate, a big stone plate, because it's 3.8 meter long, 2.2 meter large, so one block. And on the stone, you see an incredible chiseling. There is something like a frame, and inside the frame there is a man sitting, bending forward, almost like a motor racing cyclist. He uses his two hands to manipulate controls. He is sitting on a chair. The heel of his left foot is on a kind of pedal. He's separated from the back of the frame, and out of the frame you see a linking flame. Now, of course, this is not an extraterrestrial spaceship, but it's a human who saw some of his teacher from the sky and who copied it and chiseled it with his stones, with his eyes in stone. And this is incredible. Whenever you see this chiseling, you are baffled. You say, this is not possible. Of course, we have natural archaeological explanations for it. I am familiar with the whole literature. I know since the discovery in 1952, in the meantime, we have 14 different scientific explanations. The newest explanations, which come from archaeological side, they say, no, we know it is Pakal. It represents Pakal. Pakal was the second last ruler of the city of Palenque. And Pakal is really sitting in an object which leaves our planet. He goes around the Earth. Every detail on this gigantic stone tablet chiseled, every detail has to do with the universe. So this is the newest scientific interpretation. So optically, it's absolutely sensational. The tombstone of Palenque. You find it, by the way, in many of my books, and I will show it in my speech when I am in Manchester. Can't
wait for that. Daniken.com is Eric's own website there. Now, this might sound morbid. We've got another 5-6 minutes left. I'm aware of the time, and delighted that you've stayed with us so long. You're an hour ahead of us there in Switzerland. Don't take this question the wrong way. It's not meant to be an insulting question, but you're 81 years old, as healthy and as dynamic as you are. Now, you might still be here in 25 years' time. I hope you are. But imagine, in 30 years' time, Eric, you might not be here. This might sound again stupid, but I'm fascinated to get your thoughts. Where do you think you will be? Do you think you'll be in a place where you'll, first of all, come into all of this knowledge, you know, where you'll get the answer to everything, the confirmation of what you've believed? How do you feel about that, the next step, the next journey?
Well, that's a question of believing.
Yeah.
You know, here, my answer, I cannot prove it at all. I have no scientific to back up what I just say now. I personally believe in a life after life. I think I was living many times on this planet, And after my death, what we call consciousness, or what religions may call the soul, we will continue in another life. It's a never-ending story throughout the whole universe until the whole universe is again united with what we call God, the almighty, timeless being. We are probably little teeny parts of what we call God. So this is my personal believing. I believe in reincarnation.
That's an interesting one, yeah. Something I've wrestled with as well over the years, And it's interesting you talked a little bit earlier on about the simulation and the holographic universe. I lean towards that, but I'm very like you. There are times, Eric, when I'm doing something with my partner and I'm in a beautiful part of the countryside with our dog, and I look around and I think, this can't be a simulation. I can't be imagining that. It's fascinating. What would I suppose the absolute final question? What can people expect when they come to see you on Saturday, 4th of March? You're at Bowler's Exhibition Centre. It's going to be an amazing night for 2 hours. What can they expect? Do they need to suspend their disbelief? Do they need to leave their preconceptions at the door? What are they going to get from you on the night?
Well, first of all, I am Swiss, and you hear my accent. I have a heavy Swiss accent. The first thing, I hope that the British people will understand my
no problem my there,
Swiss
my friend.
accent.
No problem there.
I try to explain myself on scene. And of course, I will show you incredible pictures. I show you pictures about the plain of Nazca in Peru. The plain with these gigantic lines who look like airstrips. Pictures which you have never seen on television, because some of these television documentaries don't show you the true pictures. I show you pictures from inside the pyramid. I show you what in modern times, just in the last few years, we have found inside the Great Pyramid with robots. Small robots went into new rooms and new halls and new chiseled stuff. So I have all these pictures. I show you all these things. Of course, we go to Central America. Of course, you will see the tombstone of Palenque. Of course, we will go into the Bible. I will explain you and show you in a fascinating computer animation Ezekiel stories. First, I show you the biblical version, and then I show you the modern version. Now, I will never say this is the true. You have to find out what you think, what makes sense, etc. So we go all to these things with pictures on scene, and I hope the British public will understand my Swiss accent.
Now, finally, and I did say that was finally, but this is the absolute final. First of all, your English is absolutely fantastic, and
thank you.
Your diction, your clarity, you've got a terrific way of speaking. Don't worry about that. Now, obviously, listeners have been tweeting, because this program goes out all over the world, and people have been saying, okay, it's lovely that Eric is in Manchester. Are there any plans to give this particular talk in other cities in Europe or even in the United States?
I don't know, but you better go into my homepage, because there my secretary, it must be all on my homepage, all these dates. I myself don't know it. I know I will go to Manchester, and I will be, a few days after Manchester, I will be in Moscow. There are 3 speeches, and I will be in Australia some part of this year, again in the United States. But the exact dates and so on, I don't know. It's on my homepage. But, by the way, if some listeners have the impression, well, I could invite this Mr. von Daniken to my place to give a speech, please contact me. You have my homepage, and then we will find a way.
I've had a great time chatting with you again, Eric, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in Manchester. You're here on Saturday, March 4th, between 8 and 10 at the Bowler's Exhibition Centre, Unsolved Mysteries of the Past, the Von Daniken Legacy. Godspeed to you. Keep up the great work, and I'm looking forward to having a cup of coffee with you when you're in this city. Thanks, Eric.
Or a Scottish whiskey. Bye-bye. Thank
Scottish
you.
whiskey is good. Bye for now.
Okay.
Marvellous.
Bye, thank you. Ciao.
Lovely stuff. Eric Von Daniken on the line to us there from his home in Switzerland on Thursday's Richie Allen Show, which as usual is brought to you in association with DavidIke.com.